One of the biggest acquisitions in video game history is still having aftershock effects to this day. You all know Activision Blizzard, the home of Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Diablo, Candy Crush, and more. A massive company that's full of lucrative IPs that are constantly getting undermined and stripped for parts by upper management in order to make more money while offering milquetoast experiences to the everyday consumer. The potential of what Activision Blizzard has is beyond incredible, which is why it annoys me every single time I see how they floundered their IPs, just like all of the time, because some executive would rather charge you for DLC content than, give you a cool game to play. The other big issue is the price of games. It used to be 60, then it was 70. Now some games believe the industry can push for 80, 90, screw it, why not? Go for 100 while we're at it, right? These pay pigs will pay any price we ask them anyways. After all, who else is going to meet the demand? Meanwhile, players are still buying unfinished games, buggy launches, broken day one features all over, and the fact that some games have ads in their menus that you already paid for is just kind of insane to me. I'm looking at you, NBA 2K, by the way. You think you're slick, but you're not. But anyway, this brings me back to Bobby Kotick. If you don't remember who this guy is, he's the dude who used to run Activision Blizzard with an iron fist for years. He would also bleed consumers dry for everything that they were worth and then just make billions of dollars every single year with what he was doing. Eventually, Bobby Kotick, alongside his whole team, would entertain the idea of selling Activision Blizzard to Microsoft of all people, which they did that obviously for $69 billion. We were told that this would save Activision Blizzard. How dumb we were. Call of Duty would then be free of the clutches, and stuff like Diablo or World of Warcraft could now flourish finally, again under Microsoft's wing somehow. You fast forward a few years and well, everything kind of got worse, let's be honest. Call of Duty is still lurching by and releasing recycled content under the guise of, no guys, seriously, come on, Black Ops 7 is definitely a totally new game. Just ignore the campaign that's being held together by duct tape, guys. Come on, please. But now after the dust has already settled and things have, well, kind of gotten worse, to be honest, Bobby Kotick has emerged from his yacht to have a say about a particular lawsuit that is being placed against him and his board of directors. This comes from GameFile.com. Former Activision CEO Bobby Kotick says lawsuit opposing Microsoft Activision deal was secretly meant to help the Embracer Group. So why is this relevant? Well, the Embracer Group is a massive European conglomerate that owns a lot of IPs, stuff like Tomb Raider, Lord of the Rings, and more, just to name a few. They also screwed over plenty of developers and IPs when they kind of didn't have the money to finance all those IPs and studios they just bought over the past few years alone. But Bobby Kotick and his team are now being sued in a lawsuit by Embracer Group, and it's exposing some nasty secrets about AAA. So why is he being sued? Well, Embracer Group, alongside a Swedish pension fund, which is called AP7, have said, as seen here, that Bobby Kotick fast-tracked the selling of Activision Blizzard in order to get out of the games industry amidst claims that he was mistreating female workers at the company. Basically, Kotick got his get-out-of-jail-free card, I guess. He sold Activision Blizzard for less than it was worth, allegedly, which obviously angered these investors, which have ties to Embracer Group, and now they are, well, pissed, to say the least. As seen here, AP7, along with Embracer, are now trying to invalidate the sale of Activision Blizzard to Microsoft because they believe that they got screwed out of a lot of money in the long run due to Bobby Kotick and what he did. But what's wild is that Bobby believes that Embracer Group was actually behind the whole misconduct of female workplace harassment that was placed against Bobby Kotick, and that it was also designed to wrestle control of Activision Blizzard from him and his team so that he would lose billions of dollars. Basically, as you can see, none of this has to do with making video games that are fun to play. It's just money. It's always money. As Bobby wrote here via his own legal team, this Delaware lawsuit was apparently aimed to help pave the way for Embracer to increase its foothold in the California market at the expense of Activision, making it more difficult for Activision to recruit talent and expand through M&A activity of the sort that Activision relied on to grow historically. Embracer, however, denies all of this, where they say this in response. Perhaps difficult difficult to accept for Mr. Kotick, but we did not and do not need any help from a Swedish pension fund in competing with Activision. Basically, from the beginning of the story, so we all understand the lore, I guess, we now got two billionaire groups that are slinging their poop at each other over like a fence because one side, an Embracer and AP7, are really mad that they only made a couple of billions when, they should have made even more billions instead. Don't you love greed? Isn't it wonderful? But what's crazy that IGN got more of that interview and what actually happened with their article, which states, consoles are doing so poorly, it proves Bobby Kotick was right to sell Activision Blizzard to Microsoft for $69 billion. Wait a second, what do you mean consoles and Call of Duty are doing so poorly? What's happening now, I hear you say? So IGN starts off by saying that Kotick allegedly, according to the lawsuit, rigged the buyout of Activision Blizzard in order to save himself from both that misconduct allegation and of course he just wanted more money. And that Bobby sold Activision Blizzard at a lower rate than was expected, about $95 per share, which again equated to $69 billion, more money than anyone needs in this world. Can we all agree on that one? Like, dude, if I had $1 billion right now, I would build myself an Iron Man suit and just fly myself into the sun. As IGN's report then says here, part of Kotick's defense used the declining financial performance of Activision Blizzard, Call of Duty, and the console market in recent years to back up his claim that selling to Microsoft at $95 a share was the right thing to do at the time. Here's exactly what Bobby Kotick said. Today, given that console sales are at an all-time low and Call of Duty sales are off over 60% from the prior year, plaintiff should be expressing extreme gratitude for the foresight Activision leadership demonstrated in consummating this transaction. So, according to Bobby, the entire industry is in such irreparable damage right now that he was actually justified in getting the sale price that he did for Activision Blizzard when he sold it. It's insane that Bobby even admitted that console sales were way down, which they are, by the way, way more on that in a bit too, by the way, but that he also admitted that Call of Duty as a brand was also down 60% as well. Of course, Bobby doesn't back these claims with like actual information or graphs of any kind, but if the guy who ran Call of Duty and more for years is saying this publicly, there's probably, at least some credibility to what he's saying here. Maybe not all of it, but can we agree maybe a little bit at least? Because you don't just have a bigwig executive like this admit to the fact that, actually, the thing that I sold for $69 billion was technically already dying. Unless you frankly just kind of don't care anymore, just want to leave with your money into the sunset and go sleep on your yacht for the next year. And these people can hate Bobby Kotick all they want. The truth is that he is kind of right, that the entire narrative around expensive video games and yearly releases is starting to crumble like a fart in the wind. We already know that Black Ops 7 sold very poorly compared to Black Ops 6, which came out the year prior, obviously. It was an insane turn of events, considering that Black Ops 6 was pretty much the highest selling Call of Duty of all time, only for Black Ops 7 to sell something like 50 or Bobby just said, 60% less than the previous one. It actually got so bad that Activision Blizzard issued a statement that they would never release back-to-back sequels within Call of Duty ever again, which honestly, I'll believe that when I see it because it's pretty obvious why they did that with Black Ops. It was, to no one's surprise, reusing assets. Entire maps were reused between both 6 and 7 like crazy too. How many times are we going to have Nuketown added and then claim that, it's actually new content when it isn't already? I haven't really played Black Ops 7 since release, I got to admit. Because after I reviewed it for the channel, that game was just so disappointing, I didn't want to play it anymore. And it's not like I'm just making things up. Look at this from thegamer.com. Microsoft, which owns Activision Blizzard now, has reported its worst year ever on record in 2025. One of the stats revealed confirmed that Xbox in the UK alone was down 39% compared to the previous year. So people aren't even buying Xboxes nearly as much, and can you really blame them? Xbox, which owns Call of Duty obviously, suffered multiple mass layoffs in 2025. They tried to make their games more expensive, only to back off after nobody was biting. And then they also increased the price of their consoles and more despite nobody wanting to buy them either way. Because yeah, that's a good idea when you're already struggling. Let's just make everything even more expensive. I'm sure that's gonna work. Oh, it didn't? Well, who could have seen that one coming? Your brand, as in Xbox, is cooked when it's seen here from the gamer again that your Xbox console was even outsold by like Kinect-like devices, not to mention the PS5's completely dominating over the competition too, Switch 2 as well. Look, the point is that Bobby Kotick selling Activision Blizzard when he did, it was kind of a gigabrain move on his part, no matter what you think of the guy. He clearly saw the writing on the wall. He knew even then that the trajectory of console game sales and software was going to crater in the AAA space. So yeah, he did sell his shares for whatever he could get, and then he just made off like a bandit into the sunset. Call of Duty definitely is limping on. I mean, its player counts are really bad. The game was over 50% off not even a month after release, and players have pretty much left the game in droves for stuff like Arc Raiders and more. And I'm not even surprised that Activision has lost the money that they have, because if $60 was now $70 and that already felt like a lot, imagine having to pay $80 or more just for like a standard edition of a game in the future, with the idea that paying less means that you're cheap somehow, because the full experience is actually now packaged in a deluxe or gold edition or Spartan edition, whatever they want to call it. That's usually like $100 plus. That's not even like value pricing anymore, okay? That's pricing dictated by shareholder return expectations instead of just offering you a satisfying player experience. And what are players actually getting for these price increases that these companies have been pushing for a lot? Well, a lot of companies have leaned heavily on stuff like early access bonuses. Pay us extra to play the game early, even though it's already done, so we should probably release it. But why would we if you're going to pay like $20 or $30 more to play like 4 days early? Or stuff like cosmetics, the battle passes, the seasonal content, just microtransactions in general, or again, those freaking in-game ads in the paid menus. Something most players thought would never happen in a full-price title, but let's be real. Real ads in your paid AAA games menu, which is something that actually Call of Duty has done in the past, by the way, are not a marginal thing anymore. That's actually monetization that has been grafted onto your core experience, and there's really no way that that can be denied. And that's not even counting the like unfinished or buggy state that many big releases debut in these days too. From like broken progression not counting things, to missing features, or like unfinished campaigns that feel tacked on, which is another thing Black Ops 7 did too if you played it, because god, that campaign was so bad, dude. So what you actually purchase for $70 or more is increasingly the promise of a complete game. Instead, what you usually get is like a skeleton base with like cosmetics and monetization that work, go figure, and like a roadmap of future paid content, which usually never really tells you what you're even getting when you buy into that either, and then loads of quality of life updates that happen well after the game is already out and people have played all the content, making these updates only really good if you waited for release, which these companies do not want you to do anyways. Like Bobby Kotick can cry all he wants, say that he had to sell the company and the investors can get mad at him too. But like, the reality is that the diminishing returns of the very IPs that Activision were holding were done because people like Bobby and his pals and stuff were like running these franchises into the ground one way or another anyways. Call of Duty shouldn't be failing. Neither should Diablo or World of Warcraft or anything else that Activision owns. These are all storied legacy franchises with tons of potential even to this day. But the fact that the best case scenario was instead to just sell the entire company for less to then run away, that speaks volumes to how Activision just ran themselves into the dirt after so long. And now that Microsoft owns them, they're left to just pick up the pieces of a company that was long already dying before they even entered the picture to begin with. Bobby Kotick also blamed like Battlefield 6 for being the reason for Call of Duty's decline in 2025. He said it was eating into their market share, but that can't be right. Then why did Arc Raiders sell 12 million copies and counting? I think the reason why Call of Duty failed was kind of simple. People finally saw it for what it was, a cash grab. And it's not surprising when players were complaining about the Black Ops 7 campaign feeling similar to the previous game, because a lot of the new content was recycled, which it was, and many were turned off by the aggressive monetization and the perception that they were paying top dollar when they actually were paying top dollar for less than they got before. To frame it another way for you, they bought more expensive iterations of the same game with less net value, and then gamers voted with their wallets once they realized, oh, wait a second, we're being swindled. If the AAA pricing treadmill pushes the price up while quality just stagnates or declines year over year, which Call of Duty, Diablo, and more have done, by the way, as we all know, that's not just really greed anymore. That's like a strategic bet on players' behaviors. And so far, like he said, 60% worse sales of Call of Duty, that's their flagship series obviously, proves it's not really working anymore. This potential collapse is more than a marketing problem, okay? It's structural at this point. AAA development budgets have ballooned for years. With some titles spending hundreds of millions of dollars just to develop and market, I guarantee you that Black Ops 7's marketing budget alone, it probably costs more than Arc Raiders' entire budget to make the game to completion. That pressures publishers to then maximize their revenue per unit sold. They love things like that, hence premium editions, the battle passes. But you also need the seasonal stuff and the microtransactions and the DLC packs and yada yada yada, when each copy must now earn more money, and each sale brings in, let's be honest, less goodwill because games just launch broken all the time. Players begin to start asking questions like, wait a second, are we being swindled? Yes, you are being swindled. They then start noticing and then going like, why am I even paying $80 for something that I could get half complete at launch these days? And they're right to think that way. There is no economical incentive or really a reason to buy what Activision Blizzard or Microsoft or whoever else is selling these days at release. Because 9 times out of 10, the price will be half in less than a month anyways. This is economic logic at its core. Like, dude, if a product decreases in value while the price keeps increasing, like, yes, demand's gonna fall. And that 60% drop we now know, that is a red flag, no matter how much they try to dress it up. And it's really Activision's own fault that they couldn't negotiate a higher price either way when it came to their own acquisition. And why the sales of AAA games is obviously, again, starting to crater. Just go look at the gold editions, the ultimate editions, deluxe editions, premium passes. Whatever fancy name you want to attach to it, okay, it's all the same thing. They either bundle that content behind an inflated price tag with not just extras, but sometimes like actual essential progression or early access bonuses that make the base game feel inferior if you don't pay more. And then you have the very deconstruction of AAA games and how they're perceived is because of people like Bobby Kotick, who ruined that industry with his way of doing things. And it's because of Bobby and greedy executives like him that game companies tend to psychologically condition the players of their games into these certain behaviors that are destructive. If everyone else is buying the full experience for $100 to $120, then suddenly that $70 that you could spend, well, that feels like it's incomplete. Even if the base game hasn't really changed in real value, it just ends up becoming the next frontier in pricing psychology, if all you will, which is publisher-driven shame engineering at its finest. It's no longer about the games, valuing the entertainment or something. It's all about corporate incentives extracting the maximum amount of money from each person without delivering a proportionate increase in value too. Therefore, we are just seen as pigs in a pen to a farmer like Bobby or people like Embracer Group, because they condition the very livestock, so to speak, to no longer become receptive to the entire reason they make these games in the first place. It's because they stopped valuing your fandom and your dedication to these franchises. And this is not just Activision, okay? Recently, you also have Nintendo, right? They priced their major titles at like $80, which we know has become the new normal for Nintendo fans. And it's honestly a big reason why I haven't bought anything for my Switch 2 after reviewing that Pokemon Legends game for the channel. Because everything on Switch 2 is just way too expensive to buy before we had an acceptable baseline for what games could reasonably cost. Now, you look around, the price is just all over the place, and these companies stupidly did this to themselves. It's not your guys' fault at all. I mean, you, like the people watching, the players. But regardless, premium pricing, it has become a trend, not an exception. And many AAA games is like deluxe editions, they always surpass $100 all the time. That's not inflation correction, as some may say. That's instead, I don't know, I guess value fragmentation would probably be a good way of putting it. Meanwhile, fans on social media constantly are pointing out that standard game prices already effectively cost closer to $100 once all the actual desired content is factored into the final price anyways. Especially with like mandatory DLC and paid expansion stretching the real cost far beyond the base price. Not to mention battle passes being extra or new skin bundles or whatever other ways they can nickel and dime you pretty much these days, which again, Bobby Kotick has spearheaded this idea into games for years. This has gaming consumers trapped pretty much. You either pay more at release, pay less later once the hype is gone and people have already moved on, and then you pay for content that should have already been in the base game like a mere week or two or month after release, or you do what most people are doing these days, which is just skipping these games entirely. Like if you're watching this and you didn't buy Black Ops 7 at release or Diablo 4 or insert really any big AAA game here, Borderlands 4 even works in this analogy too, like you objectively won no matter what anyone really says, because you successfully rejected the biggest psyops the gaming industry has tried to push onto you to get you to buy these things at release for full price. And it's really no wonder why most people only feel justified in buying maybe an indie or AA title at release, because usually those games are worth the money that you actually spend on it. I spent $80 on Black Ops 7 to review for the channel. I still feel ripped off, but what this instead leads to is that publishers want to charge more because they say that the development costs, they're so high these days. But as that price just rises, gamers are going to expect reasonably, let's be real, that if things have to cost more, it then should also mean that the product has higher quality and more polish and more content. But what they actually get all too often is launch bugs. They get missing features and the seasonal monetization systems that are implemented to just make you pay more money. And these very cosmetic heavy game systems and DLC that retroactively feels like that should have been their day one, but it isn't. Because why do that when they can just sell it to you instead? Like, I'm looking at you, Mega Dimension DLC for Pokemon Legends ZA, by the way. That's a massive cash grab, by the way. So if your base game isn't delivering value worth $70 or whatever it released, which I would argue Activision Blizzard hasn't justified their prices for a really long time due to the quality of their own games, why should anyone accept $100 now? It's not like people are against paying fair value for great games or products. They are just against being charged more for less. Like, that's the entire point here. Instead, what this has led to is people just boycotting games like Call of Duty for being terrible, used game sales rising up as people don't want to pay full price, who can blame them, which then also angers AAA because now they don't get the money for the game, by the way, if it gets sold used, and this will also lead to a power vacuum, which we're already seeing where smaller development studios are offering better value at lower price points. Arc Raiders, Clair Obscur, Hades 2, clearing the house on Nintendo DS, the list goes on. And this is how you end up with subscription services cannibalizing full-price game sales, which, oh wow, Activision's new owners, Microsoft, are doing just that with Game Pass, aren't they? Wow, who could have guessed that? So what matters more than anything is that player sentiment, and this is key, word of mouth, is what actually drives long-form game sales these days. Arc Raiders didn't just exist one day and sell 12 million copies, it did that because it grew over time, establishing a baseline that told people this was something worth playing and investing into, and then over arguably a really short period of time, so like 2 months and then some only so far, that player base just grew and grew into what it is now. Call of Duty can't do that because the franchise at its core still has the stinky and like the nastiness and the shadow of Bobby Kotick just looming over them. And people like him that are attached to these sorts of games. This is why that 60% dip in Call of Duty sales is really important to point out, because it proves that publishers can chase their revenue all they want, but they have to pay attention to how their actions are causing long-term brand erosion regardless. Because gamers vote with their wallets, like, obviously, right? And if enough players decide that paying more isn't worth the compromised quality, then the pricing models will have to adjust, whether they want to or not. Sure, Activision and people like them want to push for higher price points. They want to justify selling off entire companies for billions, not caring if people get laid off or whoever else it affects. But the truth is that the fall of AAA has been largely done because of people like Bobby Kotick and Activision Blizzard's actions. They thought it was okay to ship unfinished games while monetizing them to hell and back. But people are powerless, clearly, because value, and this is key, is not determined by what the publishers want or think they deserve. Value is instead determined by what players choose to support with their money, their fandom, and their time and energy. And that sobering reality really makes these sorts of people really angry because they, as you saw earlier in this video, are out here complaining they only got billions in payouts when it should have been even more billions. Like, what level of greed are we talking about here where you're being handed billions with a fat B on your paycheck because you sat in a suit at like some board meeting? And now you're going, nah, I want to file a lawsuit because I wanted 10 yachts, not 7 in 2 houses. Like, these people are just out of touch with reality. You want for nothing. You have everything already. You don't need more, but it's because of people like this that if AAA games continue to cost more while delivering less, the cycle is just breaking, not because gamers are irrational, but because economics always favors value-driven demand over anything else. So the real question isn't really, will games cost $100? It's instead, will gamers accept paying more for less? And if you ask me, the answer is definitely not going to be that. I don't care how much GTA 6 ends up making. If any publisher or developer somehow thinks just because Rockstar can sell their games at a premium or something that they can get away with it too, they're gonna have a really bad awakening, like a harsh waking up thing that's really gonna suck for them, dude. Look, Bobby Kotick is no hero, right? The guy has undoubtedly ruined the entire AAA games industry due to the insane practices that he normalized through years upon years of releases across all of Activision's games. He made Call of Duty into a slot machine. He turned World of Warcraft into a subscription service that also believes it's right to sell you cosmetics on top of that somehow. Like, wasn't subscription services in games like MMOs originally meant to be like a thing so that the money could be used, like that they pay monthly to pay for more future game development and the servers and all that? Now they got you out here paying even more money for mounts and skins and more on top of the subscription you already pay. Like, why isn't that just included? Oh, right, because Bobby Kotick and his board of freaks ruined everything and they need more yachts. Everybody needs more yachts, guys. Please keep buying games. These executives need more yachts. Like, the simple fact that Diablo 4 has bundles in that game that are priced more than entire expansions for the same game or even the base game itself, like that tells you everything, guys. These games and the people who run them they're just insane. And with the world getting more expensive, these practices need to be changed. I don't care either way if Embracer Group feels like they lost out on more shares because Bobby sold the company. Oh, I feel so bad for you. What I care is that Bobby admitted point blank that the very actions he took as CEO led to one of gaming's biggest franchises cratering in sales and having their goodwill be abolished, while also admitting that the entire AAA games publishing scene is on the brink of collapse. Because everyone is just so goddamn greedy all the time, dude. If you want me to feel sorry for you, you have to give me reason to feel empathy for you in the first place. And I personally do not feel that whatsoever, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments, subscribe, thanks for watching, and remember guys, think hard about what you support, because when the answer is between two devils like this, sometimes it's better to just walk away altogether. And looking at the state of things, that's exactly what's happening, and they have no one to blame but themselves.